This is a JamsHams Judgement. Every week I'm going to be reviewing something. Could be anything. We've done movies, TV shows, things, games. This is the general gist of it. It's an interactive podcast, so the chat can join in the conversation and put forward their thoughts, feelings, theories, questions, anything that they want to talk about, really. Today's judgment will be on Game of Thrones, aka that dragon show that everyone was banging on about for about 8 years. So yeah, this one is, it depends how many, if we get any people in here, it might cause a bit of a stir. Might cause a bit of a stir, because the last season definitely divided opinions. So I'm going to start off with a few disclaimers. I swear I never do this, but I should say that Game of Thrones is definitely an adult show. And maybe I'll be touching on a few things, as Pete just hinted at, that might be a bit sensitive, maybe. But we'll get into that. Yeah. So basically, I'm going to try and give a little bit of a summary. But it's impossible for me to do what I usually do and give like a rundown of the plot or whatever, because it's just such a huge show with so many different characters, and it was notorious for people just not knowing any of the characters' names because there were just so many. There were so many character arcs, and it's been going for 8 years, 8 seasons, 73 episodes. It's it would be a hefty one to cover. Yep, you got one, and I'll count the dragons as one as well. So Pete, congratulations, you've named two whole characters. Or 4 if you count all the dragons. So the general plot of the whole show is that there's a place, a whole like continent called Westeros, and then off to the side there's another little bit called Essos. So 2 big islands. Westeros is made up of the 7 kingdoms. And basically the main idea of the show is that a bunch of different houses, so basically the kingdoms, or like little factions, everyone's trying to get the Iron Throne, which means you're king or queen of the whole of Westeros and all the 7 kingdoms. So that's why it's called Game of Thrones, because it's a big old Game of Thrones. So yeah, very clever title. So yeah, that's happening in Westeros, and then there's the second main subplot is Daenerys, who starts over in Essos. She is like one of the main characters, and it follows her story from being a little girl, not really a little girl, I think she is in the books though, up to her trying to get the Iron Throne, because she has a rightful claim, and well, everyone seems to have a rightful claim, so that's why it's so hotly contested. And then the third big subplot is that to the north, past a huge wall of ice, there is an army of zombies. Now this might not sound like the rest of the series so far. Bit mystical. Yeah, zombies, aka White Walkers, basically skeletons, zombies, the raised dead, as it were. There's an army of those led by a fella called the Night King, and his idea, he doesn't want a throne. He doesn't even talk or anything. He's out to destroy everyone. He's just gonna wipe Westeros clean, cover it in ice, and that's it. We'll get onto him, because like if you ask me why they're doing that, they never tell you. They're just there. They're just the monsters in the north. Winter is coming, and winter is an army of zombies. Yeah. So those are the three main things that are going on. And it jumps straight into it. Its first episode, I think, shows you one of the White Walkers. Spooky stuff. But yeah, this I'm skipping ahead. My other disclaimer. I haven't read the books. So I'm not qualified really to say what's in the books versus what's not in the books and how it differs and whatnot. I have a vague idea of what the differences are by reading articles and wikis and whatever. I know they've skipped a lot of stuff. One thing that I would have liked to see is a character called Lady Stoneheart. I think that's her name. Which is basically the Starks, Catelyn Stark, resurrected as an undead zombie who is out to just fucking have revenge on everyone. And I think she was a big part of like the books and stuff, but they just didn't include it. And I think it started off pretty close to the books, and then gradually it started to split off until the end. I think 2 seasons where they just overtook the books entirely. The books haven't been finished yet. So apparently it has the same ending, but it goes about it in different ways. Because the author told the show's producers how it all ends. So they could make it fairly accurate, I guess. So that's worth mentioning, in case we have any people that come in and go, "Oh well, actually in the books," he's like, "Okay, I don't know about the books. I don't know about the books." Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna be concentrating on like the main themes and stories. Like I said, not gonna even try and delve into every single character and what they do, because it would be like a 10-hour podcast if I tried to, even maybe more than that. There's just so much in this show. Overall, I'm gonna do the judgment early, so I feel like I need to say this early. One of the best shows. One of the best shows. You may have seen a lot of controversy and everything, but it is one of the best shows. It's currently sat at 9.4 out of 10 on IMDb with 1.5 million votes. The top-rated episode is, or 3 of them at least that I can see now, are 9.9 stars out of 10. This is a damn good show, or at least up until a point it is. Until maybe the last season. It'd be interesting to see how the season ratings change. Oh, I'm looking at it now. The ratings have gone down from like 9.9, and some of them in the last season are about 4.3. So it's safe to say that people weren't exactly too pleased with how some of this played out. Most definitely not. Hang on, I've accidentally scrolled through my notes here. So I was gonna just basically go through the first 6 or 7 or so seasons and just tell you basically what I liked about the show. And one of the main things for me that made me really enjoy, because I really enjoyed like watching this show, and obviously it's been a big part of my life. 8 years of watching this show. I think I didn't watch it right from the start. Maybe season 2 or 3, I sort of caught up and binged it a bit. But ever since then, I've kept up to date. But one of the most, it was a bit shocking, really. It was probably one of the first shows I watched about it. Did I go back? Yeah, well, like I said, I just said. I didn't start with season 3 and then not bother with season 1. It was on season 3, so I went back and watched season 1, 2, and then I was up to date. I'm not, I'm not an idiot. Yeah, one of the best and most different things about the show is that it subverted a lot of expectations, and it was the whole idea of it was that it subverted this fantasy genre. So like my description may have sounded it, fantastical and everything, but it was its main like I can't think of my words today. One of the main like ideas behind the show was it was okay, yeah, like I said, I'll get onto that. Like you get your like Lord of the Rings and things like that, and it's sort of that's like your baseline fantasy, run of the mill, kind of know what's going to happen. But with Game of Thrones, you never really knew what was going to happen. It was very different. It was set in a similar sort of world with like medieval sort of time with magic and stuff, but it's definitely more realistic, especially in a lot of some regards. And it didn't pull many, if any, punches when it came to content. I mean, I'm sure even if you don't know anything about the show, you know that there's a hell of a lot of nudity in it. We got boobies, we got weenies, we've got incest. The incest starts first episode. There's twincest even. I think they're twins. Oh, there's boobies. Oh, there's boobies galore. So many boobers. But yeah, and also weenies. If you're into weenies, it's got a fair few weenies. More boobs than weenies. It's got butts as well, if you're into butts. But yeah, everything there. Everything is there. And there's like, it doesn't skimp on the death. There are a lot of other like really hard hitting things, like there's rape and all sorts, and like a lot of torture, and like just people doing like the evilest things you can imagine. And it's not like say watching a Saw movie or something where it's like, oh, this is like a fun like torture thing. It's like, because it's only a movie, but it's like, oh shit, this seems real. This this is cutting deep here. So yeah, in general, the show did not pull any punches, which makes it really good. It makes it different. It makes it a damn good show. It made it, yeah, I've written here, it made it a lot more interesting, because like I said, it subverted your expectations. You didn't know what to expect, really. And there wasn't any plot armor. No plot armor. There was never any guarantee that your favorite character was going to survive to the next episode. You could be really rooting for one guy, and then he could just out of nowhere be dead. It's yeah, your favorite character was never ever safe. It also looks that like the show looks like, as it improved as it went on as well. It looks amazing. It was really like movie quality on a TV show. And bear in mind, every episode was movie quality, and they did 73 episodes and 8 seasons. You get that? That's insane. That's insane. Maybe you could have movie quality like before this. Maybe have movie quality for like a shorter run thing, like a limited series. But for it to go this long, and to keep up that insane amount of quality and special effects as well. Obviously, they couldn't show like the dragons in every episode because of money, but when they did, and when they really went all out, it was great. And speaking of movies, some of the episodes were even as long as movies. Like, we had hour-and-a-half episodes, and it was just like, oh, well, we're getting this movie for like it's on TV and it's a series. This is crazy. Basically got 73 movies. What about Hodor and Jon Snow? Well, seeing as we are spoiling, Hodor didn't make it. Jon Snow did. Jon's like one of my favourites, so I'm glad he didn't bite the dust. And Hodor was one of my favourites too, and I'm very sad that he... Yeah, no shit, there are spoilers. I'm literally reviewing the last season and the ending. How would you not expect spoilers? Oh, that's true. That's true. Jon Snow did die, but then he got resurrected. There's the magic for you. Sneaking in. That's a good point, actually. The magic. I'll get onto the magic. In general, like, obviously there is magic in the world, but unlike other fantasy things, there's not a lot of magic. You know it's there, but they use it very sparingly. So it was quite well balanced, and not too like overpowered. It's not like you'd see a battle and then be like, oh, but why didn't that witch just come in and wreck everyone? And it's like, well, because she can't. There are limits on that. But a few of the more fantastical elements, obviously the dragons, the Night King raising the dead. Let's see. There's like a witch called the Red Priestess. She does a few things like conjuring a smoke monster to assassinate someone. Resurrects Jon Snow. There was another guy who I can't remember the name of, who had been resurrected like 5 times by the Lord of Light or some other god, or witch or something. But in and there's like, she can like set things on fire. She did that a lot in the last season. Yeah, she had a couple respawns, but not like nothing great. Any fights? Yeah, yeah, quite a few fights, Pete. But there's no like magic fights. There's no like wizard duels and nothing like that. So it's quite well balanced in terms of the more, you know, out there fantastical elements. So yeah, it's quite well balanced, I'd say. Let's see. Another thing I really liked about the show is that it didn't speed through it. It took its time, and it let all these stories like unfold as they would, a bit more naturally, and let the characters develop a bit more naturally, rather than just like speeding through all the plot points. Apart from the last season, but we'll get on to that. No, I haven't read the books. That was one of my disclaimers. I know generally what they've left out of the books, but by no means am I an expert on the books. So yeah, I don't. But this is not about the book stuff versus on-screen stuff, because I don't know. Or I don't know enough, at least. But yeah, it took its time, which is probably why it went on for so long, and it's not a bad thing. Like, usually if you have a series like this that goes on for this long, you'd expect it to drag. I didn't find it ever dragged or had any filler episodes. I think every single episode had something important happening in it, even if it was mainly like character development and like dialogue rather than just clashing swords. But yeah, I think it's good, and there are so many characters that you can sort of pick the ones you want to like really focus on and pick the ones you want to enjoy and stuff. And obviously there are ones that you don't really care about as much. So I really couldn't care less about all the Stannis Baratheon stuff and the Red Witch and shit. I just tuned out. Every time they were on screen, I was like, no, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about you or your characters. And the brand stuff as well. Could not be bothered. Apart from Hodor. Hodor was the only redeeming factor of that whole dealio. Otherwise, they were just dragging around this cripple boy, and it was a bit boring, to be fair. A bit freaking boring, in my opinion, all that stuff. But that's like I said, because there are so many characters, that's just a small part of the whole thing. So even if you didn't like some stuff, the stuff you would like would just swamp all of that, and then you'd, on the whole, have a real good time. Unless it was like a Bran-only episode or something, which I don't think they had. Or at least I've blocked that out of my memory if they did have it. Obviously, one of the main things that we all liked about Game of Thrones were the amazing fight scenes and all the battles. They were badass. They were amazing. One of the most top-rated episode is the Battle of the Bastards, and my god, that was a hefty battle episode. It was dang good. It was dang good. And this, they don't, like I said, they don't pull any punches. These battles are brutal. Every action scene is just crazy brutal. If they're like, I think they set loads of records for like stunt men and stuff, like having the most stunt men on fire at the same time. In one of like the dragon fights, it was they set a lot of records like that, and like number of like, I don't know, people on horses in one scene, stuff like that. No, Fritz, I haven't watched the books, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's like the battles are like it tries to be realistic, I think, or at least kind of, at least, given the fantastical circumstances. Have I read the show? Yes. Sometimes there were subtitles, so I have read the show. But yeah, like I said, again, in the battles, didn't pull any punches. If there were a few main characters in a battle, you couldn't be sure that they'd be getting out of that battle. And sometimes they didn't. Often they didn't. It's like, I guess you could, like, I'm guessing, obviously if you'd read the books, you like know if like maybe they'd live or whatever, but going in blind and just watching the show, you'd be like, oh, I'm really rooting for this guy, I think he's gonna end up on the Iron Throne, and then 2 minutes later he could be just dead on the ground and you never saw him again. So, didn't pull any punches, not much plot armor until the last season. But yeah, it's just badass. It makes it real good to watch. And like I said, these are movie quality fight scenes, and a good movie quality as well. Not a bad quality movie that you might see. And it was, some of them are insane. Even in the last season that people were so divided about, some really good battle scenes, like when they finally battle the Night King's army. There's good action in there. Okay, Pete. Goodbye. But yeah, overall, a really, really satisfying show to watch. It was. I enjoyed it. I'm glad it was part of my life, and there was a time where I was like, I don't know, should I watch this? Should I not? like 2 seasons had been out, and the only like real news articles back then I saw about it was like, oh, guess who has a sex scene in this episode? And it's like, oh, okay, well, that all this show is. I not too interested, but I finally got round to catching up with it, and I'm very glad that I did. It definitely grips you. No, I haven't, Fritz. But yeah, I'm assuming people here enjoyed the show. I think most people did, judging by all the reviews and stuff. I mean, obviously divided at the end, but on the whole, pretty freaking good show, man. You haven't watched Game of Thrones, but you would have liked it. I mean, you say you would have liked it, like you won't ever have a chance to watch it. I mean, go watch it. You can watch the whole freaking thing. You can binge the lot. No more waiting around for it. No, too lazy. How could you be too lazy to sit on your ass and watch a show? What? Okay. Okay, whatever, dude. But yeah, and that was all I said was basically a review of the first 6 or 7 seasons, and then we get to the final season, which is what this podcast is going to be mainly about, because the final season, the wrap up, the end of the show, the winner of the Game of Thrones revealed. People are very, very divided, and from what I've seen, on the whole, people are not pleased with the final season, and I am included in that. I thought it was lacking. It didn't have that Game of Thrones feel for me, and it didn't have a lot of the things that I just went over that made me really like the show. So I'm gonna get into that. Hang on, let me just zoom in on my notes here because I can't read. Okay, so basically the final season threw most of the things I've just covered out of the window. And this was because it was rushed, basically. Like I said before, that the show liked to take its time and really develop the stories, and, you know, didn't skip over much, and really let it organically grow and let the characters like organically interact and like organically build the story up. But the last season was 6 episodes, and they had to wrap up everything, and it was rushed, and it felt like they had a big checklist of all the things they needed to film and show. And it's like they were going through and ticking it off like as fast as possible. It's like, okay, now this thing's done. Okay, now on to the next one. Okay, this one's done. Now on to the next one, and it's over. And that's what the final season felt like. And I think that's the main reason why people didn't like it. Especially, now this is rubbing salt in the wound. It was so rushed, and it could have easily gone on for another season or even 2. And kept the same pacing, but they just flat out refused. The creators refused. HBO offered them. They said to the creators, "Hey, you know, this is like what the biggest show in the world. If you want, we will give you whatever you want, all the funding you need, for however many more seasons you think you need." And they just said, nah, we can do it in 1, because they wanted to move on to other projects. So they rushed it out in 1 last season, even though they were offered so much, and they could have, really done something beautiful here. But here's another thing as well, that I think I heard this somewhere. I'm not sure how true this is, but the other projects that they went on to go and do instead of carrying on Game of Thrones, apparently they completely flopped, and it just didn't happen. So basically, there was no reason why they didn't carry this on and stretch it out and make it better. Basically, I mean, you can see it's rushed even by the continuity errors that have been coming out, like the coffee cup and the 2 plastic bottles that you could see in the final show. It's just I think they sped through it. I'm sure there's loads more. I mean, like the chair, just anything. You can just see they sped through the last season so much in most regards. But yeah, it's like they had a big checklist and they just had to get through it as quickly as possible. Well, I say had to. I just covered they didn't have to, which makes it worse because they had the opportunity to push it along a bit more and have it a bit more fleshed out. But everything was so brief. It was ridiculous. Another thing I didn't like about the final season is, again, going against the other thing I said I liked. Everyone that was important seemed to have major plot armor. Like I said before, you didn't know if your favourite character was going to survive. In this, you were like, oh, okay, well, yeah, everyone's got such thick plot armor, no one's going to die. And there were some major deaths. They were all like labelled major deaths in in all the news articles and everything. They were not major deaths. Mostly just side characters that hardly even had a story and were in like 12 episodes. It's just, okay, you can't call them major deaths. I mean, there are a few major deaths in like the last episode, like right, the major deaths that there were really not satisfying. Not satisfying at all. Queen Cersei, who was like one of the main villains, like it was her and the Night King that were the big villains of the show. And she'd done so many evil things, and all with a fucking stupid ass smirk on her face. You just wanted to slap a bitch all of the seasons, because she was not a nice fella. And they had you could have had such a satisfying end to her, and she gets killed by some falling bricks. She goes into a basement and gets killed by some falling bricks with her brother. That's the one of the main villains of the whole show. One of the main villains of 8 years of TV got killed with one other person in a basement by some falling rubble. And that's after pretty much every main good character saying that they were gonna take her out, especially Arya. She trained for years to be an assassin and had a kill list and was slowly working her way through the kill list, and Cersei was one of the last people left on the list, and she was heading in to kill Cersei. She was in King's Landing ready to kill her, and then she just changed her mind out of the blue, and then she got killed by bricks. Which is cool, I guess. At least she died, I suppose. So yeah, any main deaths I didn't really find as satisfying as all the previous deaths. And I think that's because it was rushed. In essence, the deaths and things, everything in the season we did have was fine. it was ruined because they rushed it. Like I said, if they'd have like made this into 2 seasons and had the same pacing and the same, you know, level of fleshing out these plot points, people probably would have liked it just as much as the other seasons, because again, it goes against expectation, and it's not often that it goes, oh yeah, I knew exactly what was going to happen. But yeah. Another thing that I didn't like is that a lot of character arcs and characterization was just either stopped dead in its tracks or completely flipped on its head or disregarded. So basically, for some people, some characters, you had, say, 8 years of build-up for their character, and in the final 3 episodes, they'd go completely the other way and undo all of what they'd done in the last 8 years. It was just oh, so your whole story was just made pointless. In particular, Jaime Lannister had a huge slow burning redemption arc where he started off as a Lannister, one of the most evil families, and he was slowly redeeming himself. He fought with everyone against the Night King's army. Finally got with Brienne of Tarth, knighted her. It was oh, you're a good bloke now. You've done some shady shit in the past, but you're turning into a good bloke. And then in the second to last episode, without any explanation or any real justification, he goes, actually, fuck all of that. I'm gonna go back to King's Landing. Fuck all of you. I'm a bad guy now, and I'm gonna go see my sister, who is Cersei Lannister, who is the evil person. So the whole build-up was scrapped in one episode, literally within 5 minutes. All gone. And then he goes back and dies. I was what was the point of watching his character grow if that's what you're gonna do with it? Jesus. And again, if that was gonna happen, it would have been so much better if you'd have just taken the time and explained it more and just fleshed it out a bit more, rather than just yeah, no. It was just... That was one of the things that pissed me off the most, because I was starting to like Jaime, and then they just threw his character in the bin, basically. And a character change like that in previous seasons could take 10 episodes, and this one happened in 10 minutes. And that's not an exaggeration. 10 minutes, completely flipped the script and changed his whole character. It was... Oh, it was not satisfying. Satisfying. I briefly mentioned that Cersei and the Night King were the main villains of the show, the big bads and the big threats in the world, and that's kind of what every season had its main villain. There was also Ramsay Bolton, who was the worst man imaginable. He cut off Theon's penis and then ate it in front of him and shit, and he the sigil of his house is a flayed man. He's just he was an inherently evil bloke, and he was one of the best characters and one of the best villains. So basically the whole rest of it had really good villains, but this season really hardly any big villain characters. Cersei and the Night King were in it, they hardly did anything. The Night King was defeated in one episode. So again, 8 years of build-up to be defeated in one episode by just being stabbed by Arya, it's good. That was the best episode of the series, because it was a huge battle sequence. But I think they should have switched around things, so the Night King was the best, or the last the final boss, as it were. And then they should have done Cersei and that whole thing first, I think. Because that, yeah, that's my opinion. That's definitely not the worst thing about this. And yeah, Cersei, as well as having the world's most unsatisfying death, she basically didn't do a damn thing the whole season. Someone tweeted, it was a funny tweet I saw, it went along the lines of, congratulations to the actor playing Cersei Lannister, you just managed to get paid millions of dollars to stand in front of a green screen and sip some wine and look evil. That is so accurate. That is so accurate. It's ridiculous. She did not a thing. She didn't do a damn thing the whole season, and she was the main villain. She was like the main baddie that they had left to destroy, and they just completely wasted it. It was so unsatisfying. I keep on saying unsatisfying, but everything about this, or most of the things about this last season, was not satisfying in the slightest. I think it would have been better if they switched the Night King and Cersei and had the Night King battle as the final thing, but I guess we'll never know. I guess we'll never know. I guess we did have one more villain, and another very swift change of character. Daenerys, the Dragon Lady, suddenly had a very big change of heart, and went from being this liberator of cities and freer of slaves, and like one of the characters that everyone was rooting for, and then she had a switch flipped after some bad things happened to her, and she ended up torching the whole city of King's Landing, killing millions. So suddenly, in the last 2 episodes, she became the main villain, even though she didn't really do anything after that. And Jon Snow ends up killing her because he didn't want that on the throne, I guess. So yeah, I guess she was meant to be the villain, but even then it was like only for like half an episode, so I wouldn't really count that. And yeah, again, that was a very not quite as sudden a character change as other characters, but it was still pretty sudden. And again, could have done with having a few more episodes to sort of flesh out the change from being this great liberator to someone who's gone a bit insane. Because they planted the seeds throughout the seasons, but it was a very instant thing when it came down to it. So yeah, not fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the winner of the Game of Thrones, as it were. So who ended up on the Iron Throne? Who won? Who won the Game of Thrones? And you might be thinking, oh, was it Daenerys? Was it Jon Snow? Was it one of these major characters? Yeah, spoiler time. If you don't want to know, click away now. It was Bran, the little cripple boy. You know, the one that I said I didn't give a shit about earlier on? Yeah, him. They put him as the king. Yep. Cool. That's, again, very unsatisfying. Not satisfying to have little cripple boy who I didn't care about as the king. A little rundown on Bran. Basically, his whole story was when he gets crippled, he starts like an adventure with Hodor and 2 other people. Goes to the north of the wall, finds this mystical guy called the Three-Eyed Raven. Finds out he's meant to be the next Three-Eyed Raven, and basically the Three-Eyed Raven can walk into animals and control them, and he can go back into the past and basically knows everything that's happened in the past. And he's meant to be the next one of those. And that's why he got the throne in the end, because he has this power to go back and look at everything and assess the situations based on what's happened in the past, and then make a good decision based on that. Which, in essence... One second, I really need to clear my throat. So yeah, in essence, like, the choice did make sense for him to go on the throne. Like, it made logical sense that he would then make the best decisions. But just because it was the most logical decision doesn't mean it was the most satisfying. I personally was hoping for Jon to be on the throne, because he didn't want power throughout the whole thing. That was his like whole shtick. But he would have made a good king. He was like king in the north and leader of the Night's Watch, and he'd proven himself to be a good leader, and he would have been a good king. So that's who I was rooting for, but it was instead given to one of the most boring characters with one of the most boring story arcs of the whole show, and it's like the whole thing led up to the most boring character getting it, and it was not satisfying for me in the slightest. You are voting for Hodor. Yeah, well, if you'd have been watching the show, you wouldn't have been voting for Hodor past like season 5 or whatever, because that ship sailed right into the ground. But yeah, so the whole big plot had a kind of dissatisfying ending. As well. The ending was also very Lord of the Ringsy, and a bit cliched. And it was just very out of place, and it felt like... I just felt really weird, because like I said, the whole rest of it was trying to subvert the genre and trying to be this different fantasy series, and then it ended pretty much exactly like Lord of the Rings did, with someone being crowned king. It even had someone writing a book of the events called A Song of Ice and Fire, which is the book series. Someone in the show wrote a book called that, just like Bilbo did in Lord of the Rings. It's like exactly the same, and it's really weird, and it shows everyone sailing off to all their different adventures and stuff, just like again in Lord of the Rings. It's not meta-P, it was just shit. Yeah, but it was just a bit weird. Like, it's not inherently a bad ending. I'm not saying I don't like the ending of Lord of the Rings. It was out of place, because they'd spent all this time trying to not be the same as all these other fantasy shows, and then they ended up by doing the exact same thing as the biggest fantasy thing ever. And it was like, okay, I mean, if that's how you want to end it, sure, but okay. But yeah, that's I think that's basically all the stuff I didn't like. Oh no, it wasn't a metaphor. It was literally just like I can't really explain it to you, Pete, because you haven't seen it. It's not a metaphor. No, just no. Come back to me if you ever watch it, and then you'll see. So yeah, all in all, the show obviously amazing. Last season not so good. last season was still fine. It was fine. It was still good, especially in parts. But it didn't have the Game of Thrones feel that all the other episodes have. Everything was rushed, and I think that's why. I think that's why so many people were disappointed with it. And I agree, to be honest. And obviously, it must have been a very hard thing to do, wrapping up all of these different characters and all these storylines, which is again why I think it should have been maybe 1 or 2 seasons longer, so they had the chance to flesh out all of these stories a bit more, and well, not the stories, just the endings, and continue on the same pace instead of having it rushed and crammed into these 6 episodes. And again, I'll say that it's a real shame, because the creators had that opportunity to make it longer. They were offered all of the funding they needed to make it longer, and they said no. And I can't wrap my head around why they'd say no to carrying on and making perfect one of the best and most popular shows in the world. It boggled my mind when I read that they were offered like all the money to carry on, and they said no. Crazy. Hello, Howlor, by the way. They were bored. Maybe. I mean, obviously it was a big part of their lives. But even if you got bored, you've made something so big that they had a duty to sort of see it out to the end. And even if they didn't want to, they could have passed it on to someone else, and they could have continued it at the same pace, rather than them just saying, no, we want to do it, we'll just cram it in and rush it all. So I mean, I don't pretend to know all the things that went on behind the scenes, but from what I read and have heard, it could have gone a lot better, and maybe it would have. I think it definitely would have benefited from maybe another season to sort of keep the pace and keep the fleshing out of the characters going. Sorry, my voice is really going today. I think I've been speaking a bit more passionately than usual, and my voice is paying the price. But yeah, overall, here comes the JamsHams Judgement, which I did spoil a bit earlier. Overall, still one of the best shows that I've seen. Up there with the Breaking Bads and shows of that caliber. It's a real shame that just the last season was a bit of a letdown. Like I said, it's not even that it was bad. It was just a letdown compared to all of the other seasons, which were so good. It's just, like I said, it's just, I'm repeating myself, I know, but it just didn't feel like Game of Thrones at the end. It was just, it was a disappointment, man. I was going to add in, and I forgot to do it until now, right as I got to the end, and I've just remembered, which is useful. All the cast and everything. It's definitely worth mentioning all of the cast, because pretty much everyone in the cast was great. Even like minor characters, the shows and the scenes they were in, it was great. I can't off the top of my head, I can't think of a bad actor on that show. I mean, there are a few actors that I don't personally like, and I don't like, not fond of their work in general. but even then, they did a good job in this show. But yeah, I think one of the biggest standout stars of this is Peter Dinklage, who played Tyrion. He got a lot of traction, obviously, from this series, and he's many people's favorites. He did an amazing job. I read on the Wikipedia just before I started, I think he's the one that's won the most awards for this show as well, which is cool. And obviously he's gone on to do a lot of other things, and obviously has done previously as well. And also a fun little fact that I hardly even realised, that he was actually in the most episodes. Out of 73, he was in 67. And it was like he's in... Tyrion was in more episodes than Jon Snow and Cersei and Daenerys, Sansa, Arya. Like he was in this show more than all of them. It was crazy to look at the IMDb and realize that. It's like, oh shit, was Tyrion the main character? I guess he was. I guess Tyrion was the main character. He was the one at the end who made the decision, because he was always like obviously he was the funny one and the lovable one that everyone liked. He was like the most likable, one of the most likable characters. But he was also very clever, and he was the one at the end that made the decision to put Bran on the throne and everything like that. And then he ends the show as Hand of the King, which he's been maybe a few times before that to all the different kings and queens, and there are lots of kings and queens. There's lots of shifts of power in this show. It's hard to go back and explain. But yeah, like if you watched the first episode and you saw this little guy, and someone said, "Oh, that's the main character of the show, by the way," you'd be like, fuck off. Fuck off. No, he's not. But he is. He is. And likewise, if you went back to the first episode and you saw a very tiny Bran being pushed out of a tower window and breaking his spine, and go, that's who ends up on the Iron Throne, you'd again be like, fuck off. No, he doesn't. Fuck off, this kid, no he doesn't, but he does. So I guess they did succeed in subverting expectations after all. But I just thought that was worth saying. And just I'm looking through the cast list now, and can't think of anyone who I didn't like. I mean, honestly, I've not seen any of his other work. I did not enjoy, like I've said, the stuff with Bran. I think Bran was designed to be sort of an irritating character in general, because he was because he can see into the past and shit, and he knows a lot. It made him like a sort of know-it-all, and he didn't really do anything. It was, again, boring, his bits. I don't know whether I didn't like the actor's portrayal or I didn't like the character, but I haven't seen any of his other work, so I can't say for sure. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, overall, fucking great show. I strongly recommend, I know you two haven't seen it, but like, now that it's finished, even though I've just spoiled it all for you, I would definitely recommend going and watching it, because there's that I've like spoiled the main plot, I guess, but there's so much more. There is so much more, and I've not even touched on anything really on all of the other stuff. It's crazy. You would have like an amazing time watching this, and even the stuff I've said, even if it seems like huge spoilers, it wouldn't change your enjoyment of the show, I think, until you maybe got to the last season, which isn't great anyway, so who cares? Yeah, I'd strongly recommend it. So I think that's pretty much it from me. That's all I've got written down and all I can think of off the top of my head. Any questions or comments from anyone before I end this video for YouTube? Now's the time before I end the recording. You do? Okay. Well, lay it on me. Lay it on me. I'll try and, as long as it's not some weird question about like season 3, episode 2 that I wouldn't know off the top of my head. Hodor. What about Hodor? He was a good character. He was one of the most lovable characters as well. Okay, I guess that's... You just wanted to say Hodor. Okay, that's fine. So... Fritz, what's your thing? What did you want to bring up? We'll patiently wait. Do. Oh. Okay. Love you too, Fritz. Okay. Before I do like end this for real, are there any real comments or questions or anything like that, or can I end? Jokes aside. No, okay, that's all. Okay, so this has been JamsHams Judgement. We have been reviewing Game of Thrones. I'm sure your opinion of everything differed wildly from mine. So you can let me know in the comments if it did, I guess. And I will cower in fear as people with more knowledge than me try to explain why I'm wrong. So this has been JamsHams Judgement. Every week I review a thing. If you have any suggestions on what I should review, go in the Discord and put them in the suggestion box, or send me a message on any of my social medias. And until next week, bye bye.